Hi there, welcome to Practical Piano. My name is Tia. I've been playing piano for 22 years and teaching for 12. And today I'm going to tell you about the 8 kinds of 7th chords that you'll find in music and how to build them. Usually theory teaches that 7th chords are made out of 3 intervals of a third stacked on top of each other. And that'll be important for later, but it's not how we're going to learn it because it's not the easiest way to identify or build your 7th chords. Instead, I'm going to teach you a different method that works much better for the average pianist. The easiest method to build a 7th chord is to take a type of triad and add a type of 7th on top of it. So the good news is that once you understand your triads and you understand your 7ths, you'll be able to build any 7th chord. The bad news is if you don't understand your triads or your 7ths, this video won't make much sense. So if you're familiar with triads and 7ths, proceed. And if you're not, check out the video I made on triads and the one I made on intervals, which I will have linked in the iCards and the description of the video. So if you understand your 4 kinds of triads and you understand your 7th interval and how to augment and diminish it, then you're ready to go. Let's dive in. The easiest way to understand the 8 kinds of 7th chords is to see them in context. So here's a chart where you can see them all. And if you like this resource, you can download it from my website, which will also be linked in the description. Now, what you might notice is that each type of triad can take 2 kinds of 7ths. The diminished triad can take a diminished 7th or a minor 7th. The minor triad can take a minor 7th or a major 7th. The major triad can take a minor 7th or a major 7th. The augmented triad can take a minor 7th or a major 7th. If you're wondering about the other 8 combinations, stick to the end of the video and I'll explain why those don't work. So now let me show you all of these 7ths on the piano so that you know what you're dealing with. And I'll show you how to build them on the piano. To keep this very simple, we're going to build all of these 7th chords starting on C as the root. Now we'll start with the smallest and then we'll go to the largest. So the smallest option is diminished. Here's a diminished triad. Now our 7ths are the major 7th, the minor 7th, the diminished 7th, and the augmented 7th, which we are not going to use for reasons I'll explain later. If you're going to add to the diminished triad, we can only add the diminished 7th or the minor 7th. So these 2 are what we'll be using. So if we have a diminished triad and we add a diminished 7th, we have the diminished 7th chord. A feature of the diminished 7th chord is that all of these notes are evenly spaced. There's 2 in between here, 2 in between here, and 2 in between there. Or you can think of this like a minor third, and the distance from here to here is a minor third, and the distance from here, here to here is a minor third. So this is 3 minor thirds stacked, or skip 2, skip 2, skip 2, whatever's easier for you to learn it. So that's your diminished 7th, and it's a fairly common chord. If we take the diminished triad and we add a minor 7th, we have a half-diminished chord, and it's called that because the triad is diminished, but the 7th is not. So it's the half-diminished 7th, which is a much nicer sound than the diminished 7th. All right, the next one is the minor triad. So if you have a minor triad, then you can add a minor 7th or a major 7th. So you can add this one or you can add this one. If you take a minor triad and you add a minor 7th, you get a minor 7th chord. If you take a minor triad and you add a major 7th, you get a minor major 7th chord. Next is our major triad. For a major triad, you can add the major 7th or the minor 7th. So if we have a major triad and we add a minor 7th, we have a dominant 7th chord. This is the original 7th chord according to theory and harmony. This is the most common 7th chord used in both classical and jazz and across other genres as well. So if you want to learn just one 7th chord, learn this one. It's the most useful. That's the dominant 7th chord built on a major triad, minor 7th. Now if we take a major triad and we add a major 7th, we have a major 7th chord. Very pretty sound, very jazzy. For our last triad type, we have the augmented triad, which is not a super pleasant sound. And for this one, you can add a minor 7th, which gives you an augmented 7th chord, or you can add a major 7th, which gives you the augmented major 7th chord. Okay, so now I'm going to show you that you can build this on any given note, okay? It doesn't have to be from C only. You can start a 7th chord on any note. And just to be extreme, we're going to start on a black key. So this is either A flat or G sharp, however you think of it, but I'm going to think of it as A flat because I like that better. So for A flat, here is the major triad, here's the minor triad, here's the diminished triad. And if we go back to the major, here's how you make it augmented. Okay, so you keep the C, but you change the E flat to an E natural. So let's build all of these in order from the smallest to the largest. We'll take your diminished triad and we'll put a diminished 7th on there. So here's your octave, major 7th, minor 7th, diminished 7th. So diminished triad, diminished 7th. Or the faster way to find this is skip 2, skip 2, skip 2, diminished 7th. Now the minor 7th, we just increase the 7th a little bit. We had a diminished 7th, now we make it a minor 7th. So this is your half diminished 7th chord. So if we have the minor triad, and we add a minor 7th. Takes me a minute to find the 7th here. One. That's the major, that's the minor. Okay, minor 7th. This is the minor 7th chord because we've got a minor triad and a minor 7th. If we put a major 7th, this is a minor major 7th chord because we've got the minor triad and the major 7th. For the major triad, if we add a minor 7th, we get a dominant 7th chord. If we have the major triad and we add a major 7th, we have the major 7th chord. For the augmented triad, we can add a minor 7th to give us the augmented 7th chord, or we can add a major 7th to give us the augmented major 7th chord. So you can build a 7th chord on any note whatsoever, as long as you know your triad and how to find it, and the type of 7th you need and how to find it. Okay, I think it's okay. Okay. So what are the most important 7th chords? We'll rank them for jazz and classical, according to what's most useful. In both jazz and classical, the dominant 7th chord reigns supreme. will use it the most often. You'll see it the most often. So if you learn one, learn this one. The major 7th chord is very common in jazz, and it's also used in some romantic and modern classical music. The half-diminished chord is very common in minor keys, so you'll see it in some minor jazz, and you'll also see it in Bach and Mozart. The minor 7th is very common in jazz, but rare in classical music. Diminished 7th chords are not used as often as the other types of 7th chords, but they are used strategically and carefully because their dissonance creates an unsettling sound that has to be resolved. So they're very useful in certain contexts, and they are used less often than other chords in both jazz and classical. But it's kind of like having that one kitchen appliance that you only use when you make one dish. Like, technically you could put this anywhere, but generally you're just going to use it in a few highly specialized spots. You'll still need it, but it shouldn't be everywhere. Minor major 7ths are very moody, and they're used in types of jazz like film noir. Augmented 7ths are used in intermediate and advanced jazz, and the augmented major 7ths are probably the most rare out of the bunch. So that is everything you need to know for your basic information on 7th chords. If you've liked the video so far, please like it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And if you have any questions so far, leave a comment. This next part is not necessary for understanding how to construct your 7th chords or where to use them. But it is helpful if you're like me and you don't like incomplete patterns. When I look at the 4 types of triads and the 4 types of 7ths, I think, well, how come we don't have 16 combinations of 7th chords? And because that bothers me, I figured out the answer. And I want to share it with you because there might be other people who are like, yeah, but what happens if you put an augmented 7th on any of these triads? Or how come I can't use a diminished 7th on the other chords? Why can't we put a major 7th on a diminished triad? So if you've got what you need, feel free to leave. But if you're curious about the answers to those questions, stick around. So why don't we have 16 kinds of 7th chords? Why do we only have 8? We're going to eliminate the others one by one. First of all, we can't use augmented 7ths in any of these cases, because if you take a major 7th, which would be C to B, and you augment that by making it half a step larger, you have C to C, which is an octave. Now the thing that happens is if you put an octave on top of a triad, you have what we call a 4-note chord, or it would be this triad with a doubled root. And we're not going to get into that because mostly we're explaining why we can't use these as 7ths. So we can't use the augmented 7th because it turns into an octave and it turns the chord into something that is not a 7th chord. It's a different kind of 4-note chord. So already we've eliminated 4 of the possibilities and we have 4 left. Next we have the diminished 7th interval. And if you take a diminished 7th, which in this case, if we're working with C, it's going to be C to A. A diminished 7th is the same sound as a major 6th because they're the same 2 notes, the same distance apart. They just have different labels depending on the context. So, a diminished 7th works on a diminished triad, but it doesn't work on any of the other triads because if you add it to the other triads, they become triads with 6ths. They become 6th chords. So, why does the diminished 7th interval work on the diminished triad? Well, that's because, as I showed you when we went over the diminished triad, all of these are evenly spaced. They are all minor thirds. And the theory definition of a 7th chord is that you stack 3 thirds of various kinds on top of each other, and that creates your 7th chord. So the diminished 7th chord works because even though it's using what is technically a major 6, you end up with 3 minor thirds stacked on top of each other, which is technically a 7th chord. So the diminished 7th chord is the exception to the diminished 7th acting like a diminished 7th instead of a major 6th. So to sum that up, diminished 7th intervals only fit on top of diminished triads. If they're on top of any other triad, they've become a major 6th. So we can eliminate 3 more options from the possible combinations, which leaves us with one last possible combination, which is the major 7th on top of the diminished triad. Why can't we use that as a chord? First of all, let's listen to it. So here's your diminished triad, which sounds terrible as it is, but it exists and we use it. And here is your major 7th, and here is your diminished triad and your major 7th all at the same time. It's even more pleasant than the diminished 7th itself. Is it unpleasant? Is it more unpleasant? I don't know. Here's the diminished 7th. And here's the diminished triad with the major 7th. To me, they sound equally bad, but let me know if one of them sounds incrementally better than the other to you. Anyways, the reason that we don't use this chord isn't because of the sound, because if we were judging these chords by the sound, the diminished 7th never would have existed. The reason that we don't use the diminished triad and the major 7th in combination is because the distance between these two notes is nothing like an interval of a third. And the theory rules say that your 7th chords have to be 3/3 stacked on top of each other. This is a tritone, which is either an augmented 4th, a diminished 5th, or just called the tritone. So here is your minor 3rd, and here's your major 3rd, and here's an augmented 3rd, but the tritone is far enough outside of that range that we cannot consider it a 3rd. So when you play this distance is what prevents it from being called the 7th chord. Basically, this one is eliminated because it doesn't fit the pattern of other 7ths. Now, let me show you the 3rds we were talking about before. So there's your diminished 7th. It has 3 minor 3rds. Your half-diminished 7th has 2 minor 3rds and the major 3rd. Your minor 7th has a minor 3rd, a major 3rd, and a minor 3rd. Your minor major 7th has a minor 3rd, major 3rd, major 3rd. The dominant 7th has a major 3rd, minor 3rd, minor 3rd. Major 7th, major 3rd, minor 3rd, major 3rd. Augmented. Augmented has a, what is this? Hold on, I have to think for a moment. Is that right? That's augmented. And that's minor 7th. Okay, yeah, this is right. So this is a major 3rd, a major 3rd, and a diminished 3rd, which is very strange, right? And your major augmented is a major 3rd, and a minor 3rd, So all of your sevenths are composed of thirds, but this one, this cannot pass as a third in any way whatsoever. This is a diminished fourth. And so we have solved the mystery of why we can't have another 8 7th chords. Okay, I hope this video has helped you, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you liked the video, like it. If you know anyone else who's also interested in 7th chords, please share. Subscribe if you want more. Comment down below if you have questions. Thank you for joining me at Practical Piano, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy practicing. Bye.